Who do you want to be? What do you want to believe? Let's review that. What's a belief? A thought you keep thinking over and over in your brain. Keep remembering to think this way in your meditation. How am I going to be with my ex or my boss? Let me close my eyes and think about what greatness looks like, what forgiveness would do, what love would do. Let me close my eyes and mentally rehearse how I'm going to be in that circumstance. I'm going to keep remembering to do these things so I don't forget. Keep doing it over and over again. You start installing the hardware. Repeat it enough times, it gets like a software program. You start behaving that way automatically. And then, my goodness, is it possible to teach our body emotionally how we do want to feel before it happens? In other words, don't wait for your wealth to feel abundant or your success to feel empowered or your healing to feel wholeness. That's waiting for something in your outer world to change, to take away the emptiness or lack that you're feeling in your inner world. Teach your body emotionally what it feels like ahead of the actual experience. And the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you can embody empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. The moment you feel grateful and whole, the healing begins, right? So now you're starting to cause an effect in your life. So have the person keep remembering to feel that way and have them practice. Sooner or later, they'll start feeling that way more. And the more they feel that way, the more they'll believe in their future. And some people get so good at doing it that they walk around feeling that emotion, they feel like their future has already happened. And when you feel like the future has already happened, you stop looking for it. And that's when the magic starts to take place in people's lives. The synchronicities, the coincidences, the opportunities, they start coming to them in their life. And that's the reflection of their own personal change. Sometimes being in such severe lack and desperation, creates a state where you can't hear anything because no new information can enter the nervous system that is not equal to the emotion the person is experiencing. Just as a broad understanding, this is why we don't do questions in our events, because you can give the person the answer to the question that they're asking you and they will not hear you. They will not hear you. In fact, they will argue against you. But if you get that person out of that emotional state, and the only person that's going to do that is them, by the way, get that person out of their emotional state, they can hear that information. So sometimes we're programmed into such lack, we're programmed, right, to wait for something out there to change, to take away this emptiness or lack. When this happens, I'll feel this, and so when things are good in our life, we feel good. And when things aren't so good in our life, we feel bad. So we're kind of victimized to the circumstances in our life. Our outer world is controlling our inner world of thoughts and feelings. So if the person has been programmed into saying, why haven't I healed? Or why hasn't this happened in my life? Because the person who's saying, why haven't I healed, is the old self. The new self would never say that, right? The new self is too busy overcoming and becoming, right? So I think people meet information at their own level. But what I can tell you that is so compelling and so exciting is that when we get people on the stage, and it happens every event, it's really quite unbelievable to see a person stand on the stage in front of 2,300 people. You would walk right past her in the grocery store. She doesn't look vegan, she doesn't look ketogenic, she doesn't look particularly fit or young or dressed well, whatever that is. She just looks like a normal person. And they stand on the stage and they tell their story of how they were diagnosed with cancer or whatever the condition is, and what they did in their life to change those health conditions. And there's numerous health conditions. When I look out in the audience and I look at people, there isn't a soul in the audience that isn't leaning in. Everybody is leaning in because there's the example of truth on the stage, and there's nothing like a good story, right? So the change that we're seeing in our community is that there's a greater acceptance, a greater belief, a greater understanding, a greater awareness to the idea that you could actually heal, because people witness it. And the person in the audience who's seeing that person who healed themselves from whatever health condition it is relates to them. And they say, my God, if that person can do it, I can do it as well. And just like an infection spreads amongst a culture and creates disease, health and wellness can become as infectious as disease, right? And so it's not uncommon. Like when that person stands on the stage and they're the 4-minute mile. If the person has Raynaud's syndrome, we've had events where 4 other people with Raynaud's syndrome healed at the end of the event, like no longer have any symptoms at all. Or we've had 5 people in one event step out of a wheelchair. Now, if you asked me if I ever thought that was possible, I would say no. So I do think when a person sees that example of truth, their awareness of possibility begins to change. And the evidence then allows the person to increase their own belief in themselves and in possibility. I always tell people you can be anybody you want. You can be any character you want to be in 3-dimensional reality, in this kind of virtual reality experience. You get to put on any character. But when it comes time to create, when it comes time to connect, you got to lay down that character. You got to lay down the identity. You got to lay down that person, right? And some people have become so idealized to their identity that they can't be anything else. And so I don't think the identity is bad. I think as long as we're able to lay it down when we create, it's important. And by the same means, if there are aspects of your personality or your identity that is undermining your life in some way, and this happens to so many people we see, even with, when they're getting healings, that their blood values get better, and then they get back into their life, and then blood values go back up, and then they get more healings, and their blood values go down, and they go back into their life. And sooner or later, this goes on 4 or 5 times, they say, is it me? Like, do I have something to do with this? And the answer is always yes. If you want to take this on, you can't take one bite. You got to actually eat the whole thing. So then what aspect of your identity then is limiting you? And what is that story that you're saying to reaffirm it to be the truth? And is it really the truth? And if it's not the truth, then you got to make a decision. And you got to make a decision with such firm intention to change that belief, that the amplitude of that choice carries a level of energy that causes your body to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making in that moment becomes a moment in time that you'll never forget. In other words, you have to say, I knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, what time of day it was when I made up my mind to change, right? It becomes a long-term memory. And the stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you remember the choice, right? And so you can't say, oh, well, I think I'm going to change this kind of part of my identity. And your body's going to say, he's lying. Like, he's not serious. He's going to still make the same choice. When you say this is it, I don't care how long it takes, time. I don't care how I feel, body. I don't care what people think of me or what's going on in my life, environment. I'm going to change. And you come out of your resting state and you make that choice. You're giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. That's what you're doing. And so people who make up their mind to change, they have to come out of their resting state and they have to say that I'm doing this. And that is a strong signal in the field.